Hello mga ka-learners! How much do you know about our country, the Philippines? Do you know about its major islands and the people living in it? How much do you know about Mindanao? You may want to stay with me in this lesson to know about Mindanao and its people. In this lesson, we will explain the differences of the various cultural groups in Mindanao, discuss briefly the history of the people of Mindanao and their struggle for national identity and self-determination, and explain the possible roots of the conflict in Mindanao. The Philippines is made up of over 7,000 islands divided into three groups, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. With a total land area of 95,000 square kilometers, Mindanao is the second largest island and is seen by many Filipinos as a land of promise. Here are some things that Mindanao is famous for. Number 1, Maria Cristina Falls. Number 2, Lanao Lake. Number 3, Tinalak Fabrics. Number 4, Philippine Monkey-Eating Eagle. Number 5, Mount Apo. Number 6, the Sea Gypsies of Sulu. Number 7, durian and lanzones that are native in Davao and Zamboanga. And number 8, the banana and pineapple plantations in Davao and South Cotabato. Mindanao is a very beautiful and rich place. It shows a great variety of geographical or land features such as high and rugged mountain ranges, volcanic peaks, plateaus, elevated lands, and swampy plain areas. Mindanao also has a very indented coastline with fine bays and harbors. The reason why, aside from agriculture, the people also depend on the sea for their living. Aside from the glorious land and water forms and the vast natural resources, Mindanao also has a diverse group of people. Do you know that there are three major cultural groups in Mindanao? These are the Moros or the Muslim population, the Lumads or native or indigenous people who are neither Muslims nor Christians, and the Christians. The Muslims. There are at least 13 indigenous groups in Mindanao that have adopted Islam or the Muslim religion as a way of life. The three largest and most politically dominant are the Magindanaon or people of the flooded plains of the Cotabato provinces, Maguindanao, Sultan Kudarat, and North and South Cotabato. The Maranao or people of the lake of the two Lanao provinces, and the Tausug or people of the current or sea of the Sulu archipelago. The remaining 10 are the Yakan, Sama, Bajau, Calagan, Sanggil, Iranun or Ilanun, Palawani, Melebugnon, Kalibugan, and Jama Mapun. Although the Muslim groups are living in geographically different environments and have different ways of living, they are bounded by a common religion, Islam. In your opinion, are the terms Moro and Muslim similar? Do they have the same meaning? The terms Muslim and Moro have been used interchangeably to refer to the various cultural groups in Mindanao. It is important to take note, however, of the difference between the two. The term Muslim refers to a universal religious identity, while Moro denotes a geopolitical, geographical, and political identity distinct to the people of Mindanao, who are Muslims and non-Muslims. The term Moro was originally used by the Spaniards to refer to the people of Mindanao who shared the religion of the Moors who had once colonized Spain. The Moors' religion was Islam, so they were Muslims. The term was used in the same way the term Indio was used for Filipinos who were converted to Christianity. What do the terms Indio and Moro denote during the Spanish regime? During the Spanish regime, Moro and Indio both mean inferior or having a lower status than the Spaniards and the Mestizos. The meaning of Moro was later transformed into something significant and important, on which the Muslims of the Philippines have taken pride of. This was due to the self-assertive attitude as institutionalized in the organization of the Moro National Liberation Front, MNLF. The term Moro is used nowadays to refer to the Filipinos in Mindanao who can either be Muslims or non-Muslims. Lumads. Lumad is a Cebuano Visayan term meaning native or indigenous. Presently, it has been used to refer to various indigenous groups in Mindanao who are neither Muslims nor Christians. There are 18 indigenous groups considered as Lumads. Among them are Ata, Bagobo, Banwaon, Bilaan, Bukidnon, Dibabawon, Higawnon, Mamanwa, Mandaya, Manguwangan, Manobo, Mansaka, Subanon, Tagakaolo, Tasaday, Tiboli, Teduray, and Ubo. Christians. Filipino Christians are those who were converted to Christianity from their pagan beliefs during the Spanish regime. Spain was able to colonize Luzon and Visayas and some parts of Mindanao and Zamboanga. During the Spaniards' time, however, most of Mindanao remained predominantly Muslim and pagan. The population of Filipino Christians in Mindanao grew during the American period and the Commonwealth government due to the migration of the people from the North and Central Islands to the South. The different cultural groups in Mindanao illustrate how diverse the cultures of its people are. They have so many differences with each other. These differences may be attributed to the different religious beliefs that they have. If you watch news in the country, you may have heard about the long struggles and conflicts in Mindanao. Let's look into a brief historical sketch of the people of Mindanao to know about their struggles. The Muslims in Mindanao have a long history of struggle. This dates back to when the Philippines was colonized by Spain for 333 years. The Spaniards set foot on our country in the mid-16th century. The Philippines, at that time, was subjected to colonial rule. Most of the Filipinos in Luzon and Visayas were converted to Christianity. Even though the Spaniards were able to conquer some parts of eastern Mindanao and Zamboanga, they failed to colonize the entire Mindanao. Muslims and Lumads fought bravely for their lands and survival. During the Spanish regime, biases and prejudices emerged between the Christianized Filipinos and the Muslims in Mindanao. At that time, the people of Mindanao did not have much sense of nationalism yet, as compared to today. This was because Mindanao was composed of various sultanates and ethnic groups that differed from one another. The Americans came, fought, and won over the Spaniards. History, however, tends to reveal that what happened was only a mock battle. The US paid $20 million to Spain in exchange for the possession of the Philippines, which at that time had no defined territorial coverage. The two countries signed the Treaty of Paris that defined the territorial coverage of the Philippines, which extended to the south and included the islands of Mindanao, Sulu, and Palawan. During the American regime, several laws were enacted that legitimized land ownership of individuals and corporations. In Mindanao, vast tracts of land occupied by Filipino Muslims and Lumads were sold or leased to settlers and plantation companies. This resulted to the dislocation and loss of ownership of Muslims and Lumads of their ancestral lands. Many of them failed to register their lands because they did not understand the registration procedures. The situation during the American period did not end even after the Filipinos established their own independent government, the Commonwealth government. According to Marites Dangilan Vitug and Glenda Gloria in their book entitled Under the Crescent Moon, Rebellion in Mindanao, the influx of the people from Luzon and Visayas to Mindanao started when the government launched a migration program in the 1950s. The people were tempted with the idea of cultivating their own land because this was abundant in Mindanao. Because of this migration, the migrants and the indigenous people of Mindanao began to compete for land ownership. Inevitably, clashes between them arose. Rich individuals or multinational corporations owned most of the productive lands in Mindanao. They grew rice, corn, pineapples, coconuts, rubber, and bananas. Also, the fertile land of Mindanao was exploited as wealthy loggers deforested the island. It is said that Mindanao has been contributing substantially to our country's income, but according to the 1997 Philippine Human Development Report, 5 predominantly Muslim provinces were among the 6 poorest out of the 74 provinces in the country. The awakening of the Moros' sense of nationalism was brought about by the Jabida massacre in March 1968. At least 23 army recruits, mostly from Sulu and Tawi-Tawi, areas in Mindanao that have a predominantly Muslim population, were allegedly killed by their superiors in Corregidor Island. This was, however, denied by the government. It has been said earlier that during the Spanish and American regimes, the Muslims of Mindanao had no sense of Muslim or Moro nationalism yet. The different Muslim groups even fought with each other. These Filipino Muslims at that time were called Moros. According to Vitug and Gloria, the Philippines was to train a special armed unit named Jabida that would create havoc in Sabah, Malaysia. If war would occur between the Philippines and Malaysia, it was hoped that the Filipinos living in Malaysia would support the Philippines. The army recruits were promised to be paid a sum of 50 pesos a month, but they did not receive any. Their food supply was very meager and they slept on plain pieces of wood. Because of their miserable condition in Corregidor, the army recruits wrote a letter of complaint addressed to then-President Marcos. A few days later, after the letter was filed, the army recruits were reduced in size because their superiors allegedly silenced them. Up to this date, their deaths remain unaccounted for. The massacre ignited the Muslim rebellion. The period of 1968 to 1971 was known to be the period of growth of student activism and Muslim consciousness. The Muslims realized that they have a distinct history and identity from the rest of the Filipinos. It was during that time that the Moro National Liberation Front, MNLF, was established and began their endless struggle for separatism. Many people say that the root of conflict is religion and cultural differences between Moros and Christians. Many political analysts say that the cause of the problem is political or simply government neglect. The Muslims and Lumads claim that the root of the problem is not only government neglect and religion, but also land ownership. The conflict in Mindanao could be attributed to economic deprivation, lack of political participation, inadequate or poor delivery of health and social services, and lack of infrastructure, among others. Most Muslims feel that they have been neglected by our government. It has been said that Mindanao contributes a lot to the national budget because of its high level of land productivity. However, most of the indigenous, Muslims and Lumads, communities and areas have yet to benefit from the wealth of the land. Let's summarize what we have learned so far. Mindanao lies in the southern part of the Philippines. It has a total land area of 95,000 square kilometers, which makes it the second largest island in the country next to Luzon. Mindanao is composed of several ethnic or cultural groups. The 3 major cultural groups in it are Muslims or Moros, Lumads, and Christians. Mindanao is such a beautiful place, but for many years until today, the island is besieged by war and poverty. The Jabida massacre awakened the Moros' sense of nationalism. It has been said that the conflict in Mindanao was caused by religious and cultural differences of the people, government neglect, and disputes over land ownership. This was a meaty lesson, mga ka-learners. I hope you learned about Mindanao, its people, and its history. Stay tuned on the next lesson where we'll learn more about Mindanao and its journey towards peace.